Good afternoon, everybody. Now, before I begin, I want to introduce our team. First off, this is our creative brand manager, Brittany Tyler, our copywriter, Jesse Stanton, our communication technologist, Aldo Padilla, and our art director, Rob. When I began this challenge that you guys put in front of me, I'm sitting across the table from one of the architects that we're interviewing, and he looks at me and he says, "Architecture is such a big word." And I woke up thinking about that this morning because he was absolutely right. It's a huge word for a huge industry with a lot of different dynamics. So we walked out of the briefing a few weeks ago with this idea of different challenges we can take on with our ideas. And we find a way that's going to improve the industry culture within architecture. Can we find a way that could possibly change public's perception of architects today? And can we prepare future architects to be better contributors to their firms, their agencies, wherever they end up? And I think we have a good story to tell you today. And the story begins with a tale of two different types of architects. We have Aaron on your left and Bob on your right. Aaron's what I'm going to call an emerging architect. She's recently out of school, been in a firm for a couple of years, hasn't got her license yet. And Bob's an established architect. He's an AIA member, he has his license, and he's actually in a position of hiring a lot of the emerging architects. And we started noticing in our interviews with them a similar frustration. Erin's upset because school taught her theory, it taught her ideas, but didn't actually teach her how to build. And Bob's frustrated because he's hiring the Aarons of the world and he feels that their pool of knowledge is a mile long, but only an inch deep. We thought this was really interesting, this friction between these two different types of architects. And what we discovered is that there's a gap. The gap that we're talking about is the gap between when I finish school with my degree and I actually become a licensed architect. This is a huge gap we found out. For the majority of people, this can take anywhere from 5 to 9 years to get all the hours and take all the tests that they need to become that licensed architect. 9 years with your eye on the prize. It's very difficult. And during this time, there aren't a lot of tools and there aren't a lot of motivations keeping with these people during these 9 years. And so you start going through this process and it's not widely understandable that they start to get a little burnt out on it. That you start to hear sentences like, "I don't need my license. I don't need to be an AIA member. I'm just going to be a designer. What is this all for?" They start feeling burnout. And today, the AIA lives over here. You guys are taking care of the registered architect. You have their best interest in mind, and you add a lot of value. But unfortunately, for the group in this here, all they kind of get met with is reminders that they're not a full architect. They get titles like intern, and associate, and junior. One of the girls we talked to, she says, "I've been here 9 years, don't call me an intern." Another guy we talked to said, "Call it anything else. Call it something different." So who lives in this? The emerging architect. This is a different group than the architect you might think of. This group is highly visual. They're collaborative. They really love sharing their work on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. They want the world to know what they're doing, what they're going through. They want to share everything they have in mind. They're highly dependent on technology, more so than the established architects today. It's a very different group of people, particularly with their mindset. Everybody we talked to agreed on one thing. The architects coming into the world today are more aspirational than any architect that came before them. They feel they're going to change the world. They call themselves designers, problem solvers, community change agents. So that's why it's so heartbreaking when they go into this gap that maybe they didn't even know existed and they start getting burnt out. But that's where our opportunity is. Let's say the AIA creates a sub-brand that emerges, that brings all the emerging architects together. And it has to be a sub-brand because the AIA already owns the established architects. So let's make something for the emerging architects. Let's make something that they can own. Let's dive in deep to this gap that is a wildly frustrating scenario. And instead of living on this side, let's jump in and provide transparency, community, mentorship, opportunity, and let's start changing the perception to keep them energized. And Rob's going to explain exactly what it's going to look like.
So we really dove into what is the life of these emerging architects? What are they really rallying behind? How can we bring them together into one community? And one thing we found is that they like the idea that architecture is a struggle. It's this long process that's hard, and it's hard for a reason. It's because you get to call yourself an architect, and that is a goal worth achieving. And it's only worth it because you have to go through this really hard process to get there. And so we found this BuzzFeed article that kind of summarizes the whole argument of what they feel like when they're going through, when they become an emerging architect. And it's the fact that you secretly love the rush of pulling an all-nighter. It's the fact that you forget what a weekend is supposed to be like. And you notice that there's a beer here. It's kind of, they like this idea of a struggle. It's kind of a fun thing, and they rally behind it. They take pride in it. It's sleeping under your studio desk more than your actual bed and not feeling weird about it. And so what we found out is that architecture is hard, but that's kind of an awesome thing. And they love that idea. And so we wanted to create a community that rallies behind that idea. And we wanted to create something that's both a physical thing and also utilizes your guys, the app you guys created, to become a tool that helps them get through this process. And so that's why we created Draft House.
The life of an architect is more dirt than diamond, more grit than glamour, more pens and permits than parties and caviar. Our late nights are spent bent over flat works, seeing in 2 dimensions what we dream in 3. Often thankless, often punishing. Architecture calls for a life of dedication, construction, resistance, and beauty. Architecture calls us all to give it all. And if we're smart, if we've maintained an integrity of desire and a thirst for change, we do what it asks. And then, we shape the world. Draft House. Grit before glory.
So this is Draft House. And what we want to do is own the idea of grit before glory. It's going through this arduous process to get to this awesome goal of becoming an actual licensed architect. So I'm going to take some time here because I'm an art director, so I like to talk about my design choices. So the name Draft House. We wanted to do something that it speaks to architects. Drafting is taking a concept and seeing it through to the end. House is something that's an open, warm, and welcoming environment. The logo itself, it came from the concept of this pencil being worn down to the nub, and also like a house that's open late night, so you're staying up all night to do your work. And we wanted to choose colors that were a little bit different from the standard AIA colors because we wanted to make it more youthful, more energetic, create a little bit of distance between AIA, but not so much that they're not associated with each other. And so the ultimate goals of Draft House are to simplify the process to becoming a licensed architect. Often what we found is when they get out into working for an actual firm, they're faced with this weird dissonance between their undergrad world, where they're working on creative processes all the time, they're building stuff, they actually get to get their hands on stuff, and then when they start working in the firm, they're doing intern work. And often it kind of scares them, it's a shock, and it causes them to drop out a lot. And so we need to make the process, and they don't really know what to expect when they get out into that gap. They don't know what they need to do, like the hours they have to gain, the experience hours, and also like the different parts of the ARU exam. And so we really want to simplify that for them and tell them beforehand so they're not faced with this shocking thing when they get out into the real world. We also want to reduce dropout. That's the idea of the transparency. Sorry, I skipped that. But you have to have this transparency where you know what to expect when you come out of graduation. And then we also want to prevent fatigue. So when you become an intern, you are often given very intern work. You're given stuff that's not very glamorous. It's not that exciting. I mean, that's what the process is worth it because you get to work on the cool stuff when you're an actual architect. So, but these guys are dropping out because they don't get to do the cool creative stuff that they were doing in undergrad. And so Draft House can facilitate projects that help them keep them creatively inspired while they're going through this process. It also gives them portfolio pieces to make them look more appealing for hire. But the main goal is to create this community and mentorship. All the people that we talked to, mostly the experienced guys, they really wanted to help the younger generation. They really wanted to make sure that the legacy of an architect is maintained. And so bringing together these two groups, so that there's a mentor, there's somebody who really there's the mentor who wants to bring these guys up, and then there's the emerging architects who really want to aspire to be an architect, and they have to meet somewhere. And so we created these project spaces. And everybody knows about the makerspace movement, but architects, I think, were the original makers. They're the guys who are always putting their hands on models and stuff. And we ran this past, I'm sure some of you guys know Emmerich, but we ran these ideas past him, he loved it. Creating these physical project spaces where you can work within. So say within Richmond, what we would do is work with local firms such as Baskerville or Spatial or Cornerstone, and have them host these draft house workshops. And that allows these emerging architects to put their hands on more 3D modeling tools and some of the other programs and stuff that they wouldn't get to use in other firms. And so we'd have these meetups every month where we would give assigned projects so that they can keep creatively inspired, but they would be hosted in local firms. So it creates this community. And so the firms also get to kind of talent scout a little bit too, because we're working with these people directly in their facilities. And so here's an example of some of the projects that we wanted to create. And they have two purposes. One is, like I said before, we want to keep emerging architects creatively inspired, but we also wanted to address the public-facing issue of an architect. The challenge that the public doesn't really know what to do with an architect, and they're seen as like introverts and like shut-ins. So we really wanted to do something that shows the true face of what it is to be an architect. And so these projects are designed to be very easily shareable and show that architects can have a very positive impact on the community. So the idea of an empty space, so it's taking spaces that you would not normally see as beautiful and turning it into something interesting, like say under a bridge or underneath like a little like the hostess thing, like UPS drop-off spot. Undervalued space. So how often have you looked at a 7-Eleven and imagined, oh, that could be really cool? Never. But until now. The thing about using things that you take for granted, like CVS and 7-Elevens, like different establishments like that, and like how cool could those places look if you really put your mind to it? And that not only is an interesting challenge, but it's very publicizable, if that's a word. I don't really know. Publicizable. But then also abandoned spaces. So we had our eyes on this building right across the street. I think it's over here actually. No, it's over there. Right across from us, where it's this abandoned building that no one's doing anything with. And what could you turn that into? What could you imagine that to be? And what we wanted to do is create these projects so that they're easily shareable and they can be put into articles such as BuzzFeed, Dwell, and Habitat, so that we can put a face to architects and show what they can actually do. So how are we going to introduce Draft House? And we think it comes with the emerging graduates, the people who have just graduated from college. And what we want to do is we want to send them a package, an invitation from Draft House to join up with this community. And what it is a different brochure that explains the process of what it is after graduating from undergrad or your bachelor's, and then what to expect during this long process, and then how it gets you to the point of licensure. And so we really, like I said before, we really wanted to simplify that process, and this lays it out in a very clean and easy way. The next thing that we're really excited about is, so when you get this package, it opens up. This is a pyramid, and it opens up into, and it reads this little message that says, "Architecture is a bold venture. It is the product, the cornerstone of Constantine and his creators, the curators of the world. Architecture is no simple science. It reflects unique passions but shapes cultures. Its call is always a step ahead of those who would hear. Creating your concepts, aching for excellence. At times they seem like lonely struggles, but you don't have to fight alone. Welcome to your home. Welcome to your base. Welcome to Draft House." And with each package, you get a key to the Draft House that has all the information and tools that we will create.
The My AIA app is a great start. It's already informative, it's got a clean system, and it's mobile. We felt that we could explore a little bit more, and we could add to really, really get these people that are in this gap and really hold on to them throughout the long process. Adding a guide, maybe a portfolio, adding more information. And the Re-envision app would be something that is designed to showcase not only all of this information, but also a lot of the work in a very visual way. The app has a landing page, which would be the the public-facing side, which would show highlights and information, and also projects that are noteworthy, events, news of the AIA and media. Because it is a modular system, it is also mobile. addition to this, we would have a community section that would have feeds, point system, forums, and all your connections along with events and news. It would allow you to track all of your current efforts so that you know where you are in the progress of your internship, where you're logging in hours and your experience hours. Can you elaborate on that and put down the type of projects that you're working with? And you can find people that are in similar tracks so that you can connect with them and find mentors. The portfolio, since you're already entering your information for all the hours you've logged, you can add more information, media, images, and this is something that could be public facing. We know that there are a lot of options out there, like Architizer, where you can put images of your firm's work. You know, NCARD has an application where you can log your hours. LinkedIn, you can connect to all kinds of people. But one thing that this does that all of those don't do is they put them all in one place. And that's what's going to get all of these emerging architects together. And this is created for the architect and not the firms.
So years from now, we can do the big national campaign talking about the amazing world of architecture. Years from now, we can talk about we can do national campaigns to talk about the amazing work that architects do today. We can do television campaigns, we can do posters, we could have a movie starring somebody as an architect. But real change has to begin within. And the AIA is in an amazing position to take care of the emerging architect, to fight for them in a better way than what's been done in the past. And it's not just a matter of getting them from point A to point B, but it's a matter of keeping them absolutely energized and focused on the goal of doing it. So with that, I turn over the first key of the draft house to you, Brian. Thank you.